What if I told you that a simple handwritten note, crafted by someone the world often overlooks, could be powerful enough to save a dying family business and rekindle something many of us thought we had lost, the quiet miracle of human connection? This is not just a story, it's a moment that unfolded inside a lakeside inn wrapped in stillness called the Juniper House. And at the center of it all was Melanie Quinn, 23 years old, profoundly deaf, and profoundly gifted in ways most people will never understand. But before that life-altering morning, before the sun had even risen on what would become a turning point for everyone involved, we need to go back to a time and place where kindness lived in the air like oxygen, until the world decided that numbers mattered more than names. It's 6:00 a.m., and the mountains of Vermont breathe in a quiet that only early risers know. Melanie, moving through the dimly lit lobby, doesn't walk so much as glide, not to avoid making noise, but because everything about her seems infused with a rare grace, a kind of silent presence that fills the room even before she smiles. She moves with a quiet purpose, approaching the guest message board as though it were a sacred space. With slow care, she erases yesterday's chalk message. Then, in flowing cursive, she writes, "Good morning, dear friends. May your day be filled with the same warmth you've brought to ours." Every letter is deliberate, every word carries weight. Born without the ability to hear the world, Melanie learned to listen in a different language, the language of presence. She speaks through expressive eyes, warm gestures, and notes written by hand, not thumbs. In an age where connection is too often reduced to emojis and character limits, she communicates soul to soul. The Juniper House isn't just a hotel. For over 4 decades, it's been a refuge carved into the Green Mountains. Founded in 1985 by Robert and Eloise Dorrance, its purpose was simple: to offer more than a place to sleep, to offer belonging. Lining its walls are black and white photos of returning guests, generations growing up together, employees becoming part of each other's stories. It was a place where no one needed to wear a name tag, because names were remembered. But the world outside the Juniper House was changing fast. Corporate giants crept into every corner of hospitality, valuing occupancy over intimacy. Online platforms demanded lower prices and higher fees. Travelers began choosing speed over sincerity, efficiency over emotion. Robert Dorrance passed away 2 years ago, but his legacy, the belief that every guest carried a story worth hearing, remained alive in the staff, especially Melanie. Every morning at 5:30, before even the birds stir, Melanie begins her ritual. She moves room to room, slipping delicate origami flowers under guest doors. A paper crane for a couple celebrating an anniversary, a lotus for a solo traveler lost in thought, a butterfly for the little girl who waved at her during breakfast. These aren't folded from fancy paper. They're made from receipts, old maps, brochures, worthless scraps, turned sacred by intention. Then come the handwritten notes. Not boilerplate thank yous, but deeply personal reflections. She mentions how a mother soothed her toddler's tantrum with a lullaby in French, or how a grandfather beamed with quiet pride as he watched his grandson roast his first marshmallow. She sees the invisible, and she honors it. The only person who truly meets her in that space of silent compassion is Jonas Cole, the 60-year-old maintenance man who taught himself American Sign Language from YouTube just so he could talk to her. His fingers move slowly but surely as he signs, "Good morning, little sparrow." That's what he calls her, not because she's fragile, but because, like a sparrow, she doesn't need a song to make the world better. She signs back with a gentle grin, "Morning, Mr. Jonas," and for a second, everything feels right. But on this morning, the air shifts. At exactly 8:15, a sleek black Tesla pulls up to the gravel drive, disrupting the quiet like a thunderclap in a hymn. Out steps Nathan Dorrance, 35, polished, brilliant, and completely out of place. He traded flannel shirts for custom suits, fishing rods for financial models, laughter for leverage. This isn't a return, it's a takeover. To the longtime staff, those who taught him how to fish and once wiped mashed potatoes from his toddler cheeks, he's no longer Nate. He's Mr. Nathan, the new boss, the man with optimization plans and revenue strategy decks. And behind him stands Eloise, his mother, watching with that complicated mix of pride and heartbreak only a parent can feel. She knows her son is capable, accomplished, even admirable in his own way. He graduated summa cum laude from Wharton, built a life on numbers and metrics, but she also knows what he doesn't yet understand. You can't spreadsheet a soul. The gap between generations becomes painfully visible. The staff whisper, unsure of their future. Nathan scrolls through projections, blind to the glances of those who once celebrated his birthdays. He's trying to fit a legacy built on heart into columns of profit and loss. But Melanie sees it all. She reads the unease in Eloise's furrowed brow, the way Nathan clenches his jaw when he talks about overhead. She sees it in the way shoulders tighten, voices lower. She doesn't just notice, she absorbs. She's spent a lifetime reading the language of posture, the shifting of energy when someone's scared or unseen. That night, while Nathan reviews performance reports on his laptop, sitting on the wraparound porch that overlooks the lake, Eloise joins him. The water glows in the moonlight, reflecting not just beauty, but memory. "Nathan, honey," she says softly, "this place was never about bottom lines. It was about giving people somewhere to feel they belong." He looks up from his spreadsheet and sees her. Really sees her. Not just the woman who raised him, but the soul of this inn. "I know, Mom," he says, his voice catching. "But if we don't evolve, we'll lose everything. We're hemorrhaging money, Dad's legacy." She touches his hand gently. There's no easy answer. Just the ache of trying to protect both history and future. 3 stories below, Melanie finishes her day the way she always does. She writes one final note on the message board, a small heart drawn with care beneath the words, "Someone here cares about you." Her rebellion is quiet, but it is powerful. Because in a world shouting for attention, sometimes the most life-changing message is the one whispered with love. In a world increasingly driven by speed and systems, we've forgotten how to care, and tomorrow that indifference would face its first real challenge. Nathan's vision of efficiency was about to collide head-on with a kind of empathy that couldn't be measured, only felt. What happens when corporate logic meets human heart? Sometimes the battles that matter most aren't fought with policies or projections, but with quiet courage, courage that dares to believe that kindness still matters. As Nathan stepped into his first full week as CEO, change arrived swiftly, like pebbles tossed into a glassy lake, rippling outwards and unsettling everything that once stood still and serene. One by one, cherished traditions disappeared. Handwritten guest notes, once lovingly updated by staff, were replaced by sleek digital kiosks. Gone were the heartfelt scribbles about a hidden hiking trail or the name of a diner where the pie tasted like someone's grandmother made it. To Nathan, the kiosks represented progress. To those who lived and breathed this place, they felt like amputations of the soul. He eliminated the beloved chalkboard messages, calling them inefficient and off-brand. The board that once held daily affirmations, love notes to the guests, and inside jokes between visitors and staff was now considered a liability, something that might disappoint if expectations weren't met with clinical consistency. Team meetings, once spontaneous check-ins filled with laughter and problem-solving over coffee, were replaced by scheduled optimization sessions. PowerPoints and metrics took the place of stories and shared wisdom. The people who had once called this place a second home now sat stiffly in conference chairs, silently mourning what they couldn't quite name. "I don't even recognize this place anymore," whispered Martha, the head housekeeper who had given 22 years to Juniper House. "Mr. Nathan wants everything documented, everything measured. But how do you measure the moment someone smiles because you remembered they love chamomile tea before bed? How do you optimize the feeling of coming home?" But in the background, Melanie resisted, not through confrontation, but through acts of quiet defiance. Her resistance wasn't loud, but it was relentless. Though new rules discouraged personal guest interaction, she continued to leave small handwritten notes, each tailored to something real she had noticed. A child's laugh, a worried brow, a gentle act of love. When Nathan replaced the handwritten guest comment cards with a sterile digital feedback system, Melanie created what she called a comfort corner. A modest nook with soft lighting, a few calming books about local folklore, a tissue box, and her handmade origami flowers. It wasn't much, but it was everything. Business travelers, tired of endless meetings, found solace in its warmth. Children calmed. Elderly guests lingered there, drawn to something they couldn't quite explain, a sense of being held without being touched. Jonas, ever faithful, became Melanie's voice, signing her concerns to others when words failed her. "She says the guests look sadder," he'd say, fingers moving deliberately. "She says their eyes don't light up when they enter the lobby anymore. She says it feels like a play now, like everyone is pretending." The first test came on a Tuesday, the kind of day that arrives quietly but leaves behind an earthquake. Mr. and Mrs. Chen returned to Juniper House for their 50th wedding anniversary, a tradition now 15 years old. The inn had become their sacred ground, gifted first by their daughter as a silver anniversary surprise. But this year was different. Mrs. Chen, now 73, was in the early stages of dementia. The signs were subtle at first, but they grew sharper, more painful. Moments of fear in familiar places, lost words, panic that rose like a wave. Mr. Chen carried the burden of watching the woman he'd loved for half a century slowly disappear in pieces too small to hold on to. Together, they had built a life, 3 children, a business, decades of shared rituals. Now he was learning to be her caretaker, her anchor in a world slowly becoming unrecognizable to her. Every gentle answer was an act of love. Every repeated reassurance, a quiet miracle. During checkout, it happened. In the lobby, Mrs. Chen froze. Her eyes darted around as fear took hold. Where are we?" she asked, voice trembling. The lobby, so familiar, suddenly felt strange, alien. Mr. Chen took her hand, his grip tender and practiced. "We're at the hotel, my love. We had a beautiful time, just like always. We're going home now." Nathan stepped forward, tablet in hand. "Mr. Chen, your checkout is complete. The receipt has been emailed. Have a great day." It was polite, professional, efficient, but hollow. Melanie saw it, saw what Nathan couldn't. The sag in Mr. Chen's shoulders, heavier than any spreadsheet. The panic in Mrs. Chen's eyes, not of strangers but of self-loss. She saw their love, raw and real, fighting back against something that couldn't be cured, only met with presence. Without asking permission, without worrying about policy, Melanie stepped forward. She gently took Mrs. Chen's hands in her own and locked eyes, not with the demand of a stranger, but the empathy of someone who had spent her life listening with her soul. She wrote, "You are Mrs. Chen. You just celebrated 50 beautiful years with a man who still looks at you like you're 25. You are loved, you are safe, and your love story is the most beautiful thing we've seen all week." Mrs. Chen read the note slowly. Tears welled. And then, recognition. Oh yes, I remember now. It was as if fog had lifted. For one moment, she was back. Whole. Seen. Mr. Chen stared, astonished. "How did you—" "No one has reached her like that in months." Everyone watching, staff, guests, even Nathan, stood frozen. There were no words, just the truth, laid bare in a quiet act of courage that no efficiency metric could ever replicate. But transformations, especially the kind that change hearts, don't happen all at once. As autumn painted Vermont in gold and crimson, reality came crashing back. Reviews plummeted, guests wrote that the inn felt like any other now. Cold, impersonal, the magic gone. TripAdvisor ratings dropped from 4.8 to 4.2 in just 3 weeks. Investors called, worried about underperforming assets. Staff, disheartened and stripped of purpose, began to leave. First Sarah at the front desk, then Miguel from maintenance. Soon 3 housekeepers with a combined 45 years of loyalty were gone. Melanie's comfort corner was dismantled, deemed a liability, her notes and flowers banned for not being cost-effective. Guest interactions now required documentation and pre-approval. The soul of Juniper House was being buried under compliance. One crisp afternoon, as red leaves tumbled outside like memories letting go, Jonas found Melanie in the supply closet, shoulders quaking with silent sobs. The air smelled of bleach and loss. "They don't see your gift," he signed slowly, his eyes filled with tears of his own. Jonas doesn't say much. He never has. But when he pulls Melanie into a quiet, fatherly embrace, his actions speak volumes. It's a hug that says, "You're not invisible here." A reminder that even when the world silences your voice, there are still those who listen with their hearts. And though her gift may have been dismissed, undervalued, even pushed to the margins by the machinery of modernization, it hasn't disappeared. Gifts like hers don't fade. They simply wait in the shadows for the moment they're needed most. That moment arrived on a seemingly ordinary Friday afternoon, just before check-in chaos fully descended. Families poured into the lobby, dragging luggage and laughter, excitement and exhaustion. Amid the orchestrated chaos, a 6-year-old girl named Emma Wilson became separated from her parents. At first it seemed like nothing more than a minor mishap, but it escalated quickly. Because Emma wasn't just any child. She was nonverbal, autistic, and already overwhelmed by the unfamiliar sights, sounds, and smells of the busy hotel lobby. The sudden sensory overload hit her like a tidal wave. Fluorescent lights buzzing above, dozens of conversations happening at once, the smell of cleaning supplies, perfume, fresh linen, and unfamiliar food all colliding in her delicate system. Emma dropped to the floor and began rocking back and forth, arms tightly crossed over her chest, her silent screams more piercing than any sound could be. Staff rushed in, panicked but well-meaning. Their training failed them instantly. "Where are her parents? Get security. Turn on the emergency lights." Each command only made things worse. The intercom blared. Bright emergency lighting flickered. Staff voices layered in confusion and concern until the noise in the room was not just loud, but unbearable. It was like trying to calm a wildfire by throwing more sparks at it. And through it all, Nathan arrived, all sharp edges and corporate instinct. "Contain the situation," he barked. "Check the cameras. Someone find her family. We can't afford to upset the other guests." But Melanie moved differently. She didn't rush. She didn't speak. She didn't try to control anything. She just moved. Softly, slowly, toward Emma, crouching gently to the child's level, eyes calm, heart wide open. She didn't demand eye contact. She didn't reach for her. Instead, she started to move her hands in slow, hypnotic gestures, almost like a dance, not formal ASL, but something primal, intuitive, a language deeper than speech. From her pocket, she pulled out a square of origami paper, the last of her secret stash, hidden despite the policy change, and she began folding. Not with urgency, but with ceremony. A paper crane crafted with devotion. Emma noticed. Her rocking slowed. Her breathing began to even out. The quiet repetition of Melanie's movements drew her in like a lullaby. Within minutes, she was mimicking the gestures. Tentative at first, then fluid. The room, once frantic, went still. Even the air seemed to hush, as if not to interrupt something sacred unfolding. Arl did. When Melanie finally placed the paper crane into Emma's small hands, it wasn't just a folded piece of paper. It was a bridge, a lifeline, a promise that she wasn't alone. On her notepad, Melanie wrote carefully, "You are brave, you are special. Someone is looking for you because they love you very much." 20 minutes later, Emma's parents arrived, faces pale with terror, voices choked with guilt. But what they saw froze them in their tracks. Their daughter was seated peacefully beside a young woman who radiated calm. She was holding the paper crane with reverence, as if it were the most precious thing she owned. Emma's mother fell to her knees. "Oh my God, Emma, how did you do that?" Her voice cracked with disbelief. "No one's ever been able to reach her, not like that, except us." Emma's father crouched beside Melanie. "Thank you," he whispered, eyes shining. "You have a gift. A real one. She sees something in you. Something most people don't have." She felt safe. And in that moment, even Nathan had to admit, this wasn't something that could be trained into a staff member. It couldn't be taught in seminars or embedded in software. It was something deeper, rarer, something human. But the crisis gripping Juniper House wasn't over. A popular travel blogger, Sarah Martinez, was set to arrive that evening. Her blog, Authentic America, had a massive following, millions of readers who relied on her to uncover hidden gems untouched by commercial hands. Her glowing review could rescue Juniper House. A bad one could bury it. Nathan, under immense pressure from corporate investors, pushed harder than ever for streamlining. "We need to modernize, or we're dead," he told Eloise during another tense conversation in her office. His voice cracked under the weight of unspoken fears. People don't want chalkboards. They want apps. They want efficiency. But Eloise looked at him, not with anger, but with deep sorrow. "You're trying to fix what's not broken, and in doing so you're breaking things that can't be fixed. Metrics don't measure meaning, Nathan. They never have." And then, like fate keeping score, the blogger arrived. Sarah stepped into the lobby at 6:47 p.m., her camera in hand, her heart set on capturing the soul of a place whispered about in nostalgic tones across decades. She expected warmth, smiles, personalized notes and family photos. What she found instead was corporate sterility. Digital check-in kiosks, distracted staff who avoided eye contact, a lobby stripped of its soul. Printed cards replaced handwritten welcomes. Every surface was gleaming, but cold. She began scribbling in her notebook immediately. Disappointing first impression. Staff disengaged. Lobby impersonal. Where is the charm, the warmth? This could be any hotel chain. Corporate makeover in progress. By the time she walked to her room, her disappointment was clear. Her followers expected heart. They were about to get a warning. And then came Saturday, the day everything broke. The kitchen crashed during the breakfast rush. Appliances failed. Staff scrambled. The dining room filled with impatient guests and cold coffee. Systems collapsed, and every carefully optimized process Nathan had implemented failed to address the one thing no algorithm could fix: the absence of heart. The soul of Juniper House was slipping through their fingers, and what came next would determine whether it vanished forever or found its way back home. The new digital ordering system crashes just after sunrise, plunging the kitchen staff into chaos. Orders backlog, communication stalls, and the rhythm that once flowed effortlessly between team members turns into a stuttered mess of confused glances and cold breakfasts. Then come two families with special needs children, early arrivals seeking calm and familiarity. Instead, they walk straight into a vortex of sensory overload. The brilliant LED lobby lights, once marketed as crisp and professional, now feel blinding. The automated music system echoes too loudly in the high-ceilinged space. The children cover their ears, retreating into themselves, overwhelmed and terrified. Their distress quickly spreads to parents already exhausted from travel, and ripples out to other guests, igniting frustration, unease, and rising tension. But the moment that breaks everything, truly fractures the illusion of control, comes wrapped in vulnerability. Mrs. Patterson, 78 years old, walks through the front doors expecting warmth. This was her first vacation alone since Harold, her husband of 43 years, passed away just 6 months ago. She chose Juniper House because the online reviews promised something special. Not just comfort, but care. She wanted a place that could hold her gently in this new chapter of widowhood. What she finds is a cold, automated lobby. Staff members rushing, distracted. No one notices the tremor in her hands. No one offers her a smile that says, "You're not alone." And then, right there in the middle of the lobby, she crumbles. Grief crashes through her like a tidal wave she's held back for too long. She sinks onto a bench, sobbing uncontrollably, clutching her purse like it's the only thing tethering her to the world. Guests freeze, a hush falls. The rawness of her pain slices through the sterile air. The small terrors of famine rush like thunder. Sarah Martinez, the travel blogger, watches it all. She sees more than chaos. She sees heartbreak, unacknowledged and untreated. Her pen moves furiously, recording not just observations, but a sense of betrayal. This isn't the Juniper House she came to write about. This isn't the sanctuary she was promised. It's become a shadow of itself. The soul of the place, she writes, has been optimized right out of existence. Nathan tries to contain the situation with the only tools he knows: authority and structure. He issues clipped commands, cross-checks emergency procedure charts, consults policies about handling emotionally distressed guests. Staff stiffen under his direction. No one moves like a human anymore. They move like chess pieces. The warmth that once radiated through this place, the organic flow between people who cared, is now replaced by hierarchy. People hesitate. They follow protocol instead of instinct. The humanity has gone missing. And then Melanie sees her. Mrs. Patterson, slumped over, tears sliding silently down her cheeks, her body shaking with the grief of love lost and loneliness found. Without pause, Melanie begins to move, but Nathan intercepts her. "You're not trained for this," he says sharply, gesturing at the procedural tablet in his hands. "Let the certified staff handle it. We have policies for these situations." But before she can retreat, Mrs. Patterson's voice rises, raw and cutting. "No one understands. Harold always knew how to help. He'd hold my hand and tell me everything would be okay. He'd know what to do. But nobody here cares anymore. It's all just business now. Cold, clinical. I thought this place was different." Her words fall like hammers. Even Sarah looks up, eyes wide. Sarah writes, "Caring employee blocked from helping grieving guest. Heart sacrificed for efficiency. The legacy is unraveling. Everyone in the room can feel it. The unspoken plea. Let Melanie help. For once, just see what's really happening." And this becomes the test, the defining moment, the space between who Melanie has been asked to be and who she truly is. The air feels charged, like the building itself is waiting, watching. And then she chooses. Melanie steps past Nathan. She approaches slowly, deliberately, not with the rush of someone trying to fix, but the presence of someone willing to sit with the brokenness. She lowers herself beside Mrs. Patterson on the plush lobby sofa. Their eyes meet. There's no small talk, no "can I help you?" Just the stillness of shared grief and mutual understanding. On her notepad, Melanie writes, "Tell me about Harold. What would he do right now?" Mrs. Patterson stares, and then, like a flood breaking loose, her pain begins to pour into story. "He'd make me tea, with extra honey, just like my mother used to. And he'd talk about our roses, the ones we planted on our 10th anniversary. They're still blooming, you know, every spring, even now." Melanie listens, really listens, and then she rises, not with panic, but with purpose. She disappears briefly. When she returns, she carries a porcelain tea set, Juniper House's finest china, pulled from a back cabinet Nathan had almost retired for budget reasons. She's found old photos from the hotel garden, prints she carefully arranged into a small collage. She places a delicate origami rose on the table, every piece a fragment of memory, an altar to what still matters. She writes, "Errol sent me to sit with you until the scared feeling passes. He wants you to know your love story still matters." The transformation is breathtaking. Mrs. Patterson straightens. Her sobs soften. Her breathing slows. And her voice, though fragile, begins to rise with warmth. She talks about Harold, about their coffee rituals, their Sunday garden walks, the love that stitched their lives together quietly but completely. Other guests draw closer, quietly. Even the families with sensory overloaded children begin to calm. It's as if Melanie's energy, so soft it's almost invisible, has created a ripple of peace through the room. Jonas appears beside Nathan, who is frozen in place, tablet still in hand. "Boss," Jonas says softly, placing a hand on Nathan's shoulder. "You need to see this, really see it." And finally, Nathan looks. Not at metrics, not at reports, but at people. He sees Melanie not as a liability, but as a miracle. He sees Mrs. Patterson laughing gently between tears, holding a china teacup like it's a lifeline. He sees staff smiling again, shoulders relaxed, hearts engaged. They're no longer employees performing tasks, they're family, responding to need. The old Juniper House, his father's Juniper House, is coming back to life. Sarah approaches quietly, her camera lowered now, her notebook full. "This," she says to Nathan, eyes shining with sincerity, "this is what your parents built. Not a hotel, a home, a sanctuary, a place where people remember they belong to each other." And in that moment, something inside Nathan cracks open, not with shame, but with clarity. This is what leadership looks like. This is what love can build. And it can still be saved. The article ends with a sentence that would be quoted across the hospitality industry for years to come. "I watched a young woman who has never spoken aloud teach an entire business how to listen." In that simple sentence was everything. The reawakening of purpose, the collision of heart and policy, and the quiet revolution sparked by someone the world had overlooked. Sarah Martinez didn't write the scathing critique she had intended. Instead, she crafted a love letter to what hospitality was always meant to be. Her words resonated not because they were flashy, but because they were real. "If you want to understand what hospitality meant before we optimized the heart out of it, go to the Juniper House," she wrote. "And if you want to see what it could mean again, watch Melanie Quinn work her quiet magic." Longtime staff read those lines with tears in their eyes. Many of them had worked decades to protect the very soul she described. And now, in Melanie, they saw everything they had been fighting for. Everything they feared was slipping away. She wasn't just an employee. She was their lighthouse. But the most remarkable transformation was happening in the man who once saw himself as Melanie's superior. Nathan, For the first time since stepping back into the place that shaped his childhood, he didn't see Melanie as a risk to be managed or a limitation to work around. He saw her clearly, as his father had, not as background, not as labor, but as the embodiment of what they were building all along. He turned to Jonas in quiet awe. "She's not just an employee," he whispered, his voice cracking with realization. "She's the heart of this place. She's what Dad meant when he said hospitality isn't a service, it's a soul." From that moment, change began rippling through the hotel like a gentle tide. Mrs. Patterson didn't just recover, she became a beacon for others, starting a spontaneous support group in the lounge, sharing her grief and giving others permission to do the same. Emma's parents approached Nathan with a request. Could they book recurring weekends, not for the amenities, but for the woman who somehow understood their daughter without needing words? They had found something here no specialist could provide, a place where Emma wasn't just accommodated, she was celebrated. Sarah's article transformed from a business expose into a tribute, a praise song, a manifesto for a new kind of hospitality. "When we let empathy lead, efficiency follows," she wrote. "And when kindness becomes the brand, magic happens." The lobby filled once again with laughter that wasn't staged, conversations that didn't follow scripts. Staff who had been job hunting began pulling their resumes from job boards. Instead of asking what went wrong, they began wondering what else could go right. Sometimes the greatest leaders are the ones who finally learn to follow. And for Nathan, that lesson arrived not in a business seminar, but in the gaze of a silent young woman folding paper into prayer. On Sunday morning, the transformation reached its peak. The sun rose over Lake Champlain, spilling golden light across the wraparound porch, casting a sacred glow inside the Juniper House lobby. This was the morning of the most important staff meeting in 40 years. But there were no charts this time, no graphs, no whiteboards. Nathan stood before his team wearing his father's old cardigan and holding nothing but car keys and humility. "I came back thinking I knew how to run a business," he began, looking directly at Melanie. "I brought spreadsheets, metrics, optimization plans. I believed success meant speed, scale, and system." He paused, voice trembling slightly. "But Melanie, she taught me something business school never did. That we don't just serve customers here, we serve souls. And a soul doesn't care how fast you move. It cares that you see it, that you honor it." From that moment forward, every policy shifted. Handwritten notes returned, anchoring each guest experience. Melanie's once forbidden comfort corner was renamed Melanie's Place, now a cornerstone of the guest experience. Guests sat with books, origami, or memories, sometimes in silence, sometimes in tears, but always together. New staff were trained not in scripts, but in Melanie's philosophy. If someone needs comfort, offer it. If someone needs to be heard, listen. If someone needs to belong, make this that place. Martha, the head housekeeper, wept quietly in the back of the room, her heart stretching wider than it had in years. Her family, broken and splintered, was becoming whole again. On Monday morning, Sarah's article published under the headline, "The Juniper House, Where Silence Speaks Louder Than Words." The feature photo showed Melanie and Mrs. Patterson, tea between them, smiles soft but full, a generational bridge built not with policies, but with compassion. The article exploded online. "This is what hospitality used to mean," read one comment, shared 10,000 times. "Faith in humanity restored," read another. Requests flooded in. A family from California booked a stay for their autistic son. A widower from Texas called and said Sarah's words helped him believe he might smile again someday. A month later, Melanie was leading her own training sessions, teaching new staff to listen not just with ears, but with heart. Her curriculum wasn't found in textbooks. It came from living. She taught them to see the stories hiding in people's eyes. The business traveler weighed down by divorce. The grandmother who missed her grandchildren more than she'd admit. The young couple hiding infertility grief behind forced smiles. "We're not here to fix them," Nathan explained in one session, translating Melanie's handwritten lesson. "We're here to honor them." Melanie's work spread. Mrs. Patterson returned with her daughter Linda, who said, "We just wanted to see our angel again." Linda added, "Mom hasn't had a panic attack since. She writes to Melanie every week. She says Harold still lives in every kind act." Emma's family became regular guests. Her mother said, "This is the only place she's completely herself. She speaks with Melanie in ways we've never seen at home." Melanie and Emma developed their own communication. Beyond sign language, it was hand gestures, origami, presence, safety, love. The impact rippled outward. Other businesses in the Green Mountains began copying Juniper House values. The local cafe added handwritten thank you cards. The bookstore created a reading corner with blankets and tea. The medical practice doubled their patient time. In the elementary school, they added Melanie moments, daily acts of kindness for students and staff. Nathan found himself invited to speak at hospitality conferences. His keynote? "What a deaf employee taught me about hearing what matters." His message spread across the country. "We've spent years optimizing hospitality for speed and convenience," he said. "But in doing so, we've optimized the humanity right out of it. The Juniper House didn't succeed by eliminating friction. It succeeded by embracing the beautiful, unpredictable mess of real human connection." But the most meaningful change was personal. Each evening, Nathan sat with Eloise on the porch, sharing tea, watching the lake. "Now you understand," she said gently, her hand resting on his. "What your father and I were really building. Not just a business, but a home. A place where people remember they belong to each other." And beside them, through the lobby windows, Melanie sat at her corner table, folding, listening, loving. The girl who never spoke out loud, teaching the world how to hear again. Nathan nods, a quiet wave of understanding flooding through him, warm, unrelenting, and long overdue. "I spent so much time trying to scale what you created," he says softly to Eloise, "that I nearly destroyed the very soul that made it worth saving. You can't systematize love. You can't optimize genuine care. You can only create the space where it can flourish." Eloise smiles, not with pride, but with recognition, the kind only a mother gives her grown child when he finally sees what she's always known. She shares old stories of crises that turned into connections, of guests who became godparents to staff children, of regulars who checked in year after year, not for amenities, but for a feeling they couldn't name. "Your father used to say we weren't in the hospitality business," she says. "We were in the humanity business. We just happened to serve rooms and meals while reminding people of their worth." Nathan makes his decision. This moment defines his leadership, not by reclaiming control, but by releasing fear. The Juniper House would move forward, yes. Technology would be updated, systems improved, but never again at the cost of its soul. Never again would optimization outweigh human connection. And while the guests would continue to receive exceptional service, the greatest gift would go to Melanie. The final, quiet transformation wasn't for them. It was for her. 3 months to the day after our story began, at 6:00 a.m., spring breathes fresh life into the Vermont morning. Melanie walks through the lobby, expecting to begin her day like always. But something's different. The guest message board is already written on. She stops, reads, in chalk handwriting that mirrors her own, fluid, gentle, luminous. It says, "Dear Melanie, thank you for teaching us that the most important conversations happen without words. Today we listen with our hearts. The Juniper House family." She reads the message again and again. Her heart begins to grasp what her mind can't yet believe. This isn't just a note. It's a love letter from a family she never realized she had built. She turns slowly, and there they are: Nathan, Eloise, Jonas, Martha, Miguel, Sarah, all the staff, all the people whose lives she's touched. Standing silently in the lobby, faces aglow with the joy of witnessing something sacred. Martha steps forward, holding a bouquet of origami flowers, each one folded by a different team member. Sarah carries a photo album, handmade, pages filled with 3 months of guest stories, snapshots of lives forever changed. Mated Miguel holds a wooden plaque, engraved in bold, loving script, "The heart of the Juniper House." And then Nathan steps forward. He doesn't speak. Instead, he raises his hands and begins signing. "You saved us all." And signs with care and confidence, signs he's been practicing in secret with Jonas late at night, not out of obligation, but love. The silence that follows is profound, like the space between a question and its answer, between isolation and belonging. And then it happens. Melanie opens her mouth. For the first time in this story, her voice finds breath. It's not perfect. It doesn't need to be. But it's hers. Strong, gentle, whole. "No, you all taught me," she says, her voice shaped by vibrations she's felt rather than heard. "You taught me that family isn't who speaks the loudest. It's who listens the closest. No one moves, no one dares to speak, because some moments belong to the sacred silence that follows truth." Then, the embrace. Not organized, not staged, just real. A ripple of arms, tears, laughter, arms reaching out and wrapping around the girl who never needed to raise her voice to change everything. This was the real Juniper House. Not built by investors, not optimized by consultants, but held together by love, restored by courage, and completed by the quiet power of someone the world nearly missed. 6 months later, the Juniper House thrives, not by traditional metrics, but by a heartbeat felt in every room. The lobby is filled with the sounds of unforced laughter, the kind of conversations that heal, the quiet clinks of tea being poured for someone who needs to be seen. Families now book not for luxury, but for the increasingly rare gift of being genuinely cared for, not as customers, but as people. There's a wait list, but Nathan refuses to expand. "I'd rather preserve intimacy," he says, "than sacrifice magic." Melanie's Corner is now famous. Parents of autistic children call it a haven, a sanctuary. It has become a community nexus, fostering deep bonds between families who once felt isolated. Group chats buzz with shared wisdom. What worked for Emma might help Max. Try this origami for regulation. This book helped me explain memory loss to my daughter. Mrs. Patterson writes Melanie weekly. Their letters, filled with Harold's memories, form a bridge across generations. Their friendship, forged in grief, has bloomed into something beautifully healing. Emma's family returns every year, but more importantly, they've stopped trying to fix her. They now understand her differently, with love, with pride. Support groups have formed, widows, caregivers, parents, travelers, who meet not for therapy but for understanding. Business travelers return too, but for different reasons now, not for fast Wi-Fi, for something more meaningful, perspective. Nathan is asked to speak at Harvard Business School. He says no. Some things he believes are too sacred to dissect. Instead, the Juniper House becomes a quiet beacon. Hospitality professionals visit, not for certification, but for wisdom. There are no programs, no fees, just open doors. Melanie now speaks often. Her voice, once hidden, is now shared with strength and softness. Each talk ends with a paper crane folding. Guests learn to fold, to breathe, to create, to remember that stillness is not idleness, but reverence. The most important thing I want you to understand, she tells audiences, each word deliberate, is that every person has something to give, even when the world doesn't recognize it. Everyone has value, even when they're different. And everyone deserves to be seen, heard, and loved, especially when they don't know how to ask for it. So if this story touched your heart, like it did mine, I invite you not just to subscribe to a channel, but to a way of living, a way of seeing, a way of believing that kindness is still powerful, that empathy is still revolutionary, that in a world too often chasing scale and speed, the greatest gift we can offer is our presence, that the most important conversations still happen without words. Thank you for listening with your heart. Thank you for remembering what it means to belong. Welcome home. Welcome to the Juniper House.